Chip War, the fight for the world's most critical technology. Introduction: the invisible empire. Most of us think that the world's most valuable resource is oil. We think that wars are fought over borders, gold, or religion. But there is a thinner, smaller, and far more powerful resource that controls every second of your modern life. It is the silicon chip. Right now, as you listen to this, you are surrounded by them. They are in your phone, your car, your microwave, and the servers that host this audio. They are in the missiles that defend nations and the satellites that map our world. But here is the terrifying reality. Almost all of the world's most advanced chips are made in one place, a handful of factories on a small island off the coast of China. Welcome to our deep dive into Chip War, the fight for the world's most critical technology, by Chris Miller. This isn't just a book about tech. It is a geopolitical thriller that spans decades. It is the story of how the United States, China, Russia, and Taiwan are locked in a desperate struggle to control the brains of the modern world. Chris Miller, a historian and professor, pulls back the curtain on a trillion-dollar industry that is so complex, so precise, and so fragile that a single natural disaster or a single political misstep could send the global economy back into the Stone Age. If you want to understand why China is eyeing Taiwan, why the US is spending billions on domestic factories, and why the future of AI depends on a single company you've probably never heard of, stay tuned. This is the story of the most important war you didn't know we were fighting. Chapter 1: The Birth of the Silicon Age. To understand the war, we have to go back to the beginning. The story starts not in a boardroom, but in the laboratory. In the mid-20th century, computers were the size of rooms and powered by vacuum tubes that were hot, fragile, and inefficient. Then came the transistor. Developed at Bell Labs, it was a tiny switch that could control the flow of electricity. When scientists realized they could carve these switches onto a single sliver of silicon, the integrated circuit was born. This was the Big Bang of the digital era. Chris Miller highlights two men who changed everything: Robert Noyce and Jack Kilby. But more importantly, he highlights the Silicon Valley culture that emerged, a culture of Moore's Law. Gordon Moore, the co-founder of Intel, predicted that the number of transistors on a chip would double every 2 years. For 50 years, that prediction held true. It turned computers from room-sized behemoths into the tiny supercomputers in our pockets. But as chips got smaller, the cost of making them got bigger. This created a winner-take-all dynamic. If you weren't the absolute best, you were out of business. Chapter 2: The Weapons of War. Why are chips so critical to the military? Miller takes us back to the Cold War. The US realized early on that it couldn't outproduce the Soviet Union in terms of raw numbers: more tanks, more soldiers, more steel. So the US decided to outthink them. The offset strategy used chips to make weapons smart. For the first time, missiles could be guided with surgical precision. Tanks could see in the dark. Ships could communicate across oceans in real time. The Soviet Union tried to keep up by stealing Western tech, but because they lacked the ecosystem of innovation, they were always 5 to 10 years behind. Today, that gap is the difference between victory and defeat. Modern warfare isn't about who has the most soldiers. It's about who has the best algorithms and the chips to run them. From drones to cyber warfare to hypersonic missiles, the high ground is no longer a hill. It's a nanometer. Chapter 3: The Island That Holds the World Hostage. This is the heart of the book: Taiwan. Specifically, a company called TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Founded by Morris Chang, a man who was passed over for the top job at Texas Instruments, TSMC did something radical. They didn't design chips, they only made them for other people. This made them the Switzerland of the tech world. Apple, Nvidia, and even the US military all rely on TSMC. Today, TSMC manufactures roughly 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. If a war were to break out in the Taiwan Strait, or if a massive earthquake hit the island, the global supply of chips would vanish. We aren't talking about a shortage of iPhones. We are talking about the total collapse of the automotive industry, the healthcare system, and the global power grid. Miller argues that Taiwan is the silicon shield that keeps the peace, but it is also the most dangerous flashpoint in global politics.
Chapter 4: The Chinese Challenge. For decades, China watched the US lead the chip industry. They realized that their massive manufacturing base was built on a foundation of foreign technology. They were the world's factory, but they didn't own the brains. As Miller explains, China began spending more money on importing chips than they did on importing oil. To the Chinese Communist Party, this was a strategic vulnerability. They launched a Made in China 2025 plan, pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into building their own domestic chip industry. But there's a problem. You can't just buy your way into the top tier of chip manufacturing. The machines required to make the most advanced chips are the most complex instruments ever built by humans. One machine, made by a Dutch company called ASML, cost over $200 million and uses lasers to print circuits that are smaller than a virus. China can build the factories, but they cannot yet build the machines that built the chips. Chapter 5. The U.S. Fight Back. In recent years, the U.S. government realized it had a problem. It had offshored almost all its manufacturing to Asia. If China were to take Taiwan, the U.S. would be strategically blinded. This led to the CHIPS Act and a series of aggressive export controls. The U.S. began banning China from buying high-end chips and the equipment to make them. It was a declaration of economic war. The goal was simple: to freeze China's technological progress in its tracks. Miller points out that this is a high-risk gamble. By cutting China off, the U.S. is forcing China to innovate even faster. It is also hurting the profits of American chip companies like Intel and NVIDIA, who rely on the Chinese market for revenue. The chip war is a game of chicken, where the stakes are the future of artificial intelligence and global hegemony. Chapter 6. The Complexity of the Supply Chain. One of the most eye-opening parts of Miller's book is his description of how globalized this industry is. A single chip might be designed in California using software from the UK, made in Taiwan using machines from the Netherlands, with chemicals from Japan and silicon from Germany, and then packaged in Malaysia. There is no such thing as a national chip industry. It is a web of thousands of specialized companies. If you pull one thread, the whole thing unspools. This complexity is what makes the industry so hard to replicate, but also so vulnerable to sabotage. Miller argues that we have built a world that is incredibly efficient but dangerously fragile. Chapter 7. The Future, AI and Beyond. Why does this matter so much right now? Because of artificial intelligence. AI requires massive amounts of compute. To train a model like GPT-4 or to run a fleet of self-driving cars, you need thousands of the most advanced chips working in perfect unison. The nation that has the best chips will have the best AI. The best AI will lead to the best military tech, the most efficient economy, and the fastest scientific breakthroughs. We are no longer just fighting over gadgets. We are fighting over who gets to define the intelligence of the future. Miller suggests that we are entering a new era of techno-nationalism. The era of globalization is over, and the era of strategic autonomy has begun. Every major power is now trying to build a silicon fortress to protect its future. Chapter 8. The Human Element. Behind the billions of dollars and the geopolitical chess moves are the people. Miller does a masterful job of telling the stories of the engineers and the visionaries who made this possible. From the refugees of the 1940s who brought their brilliance to the U.S., to the Taiwanese engineers who worked 20-hour shifts to perfect a manufacturing process, the chip war is a human story. It is a story of ambition, ego, and the relentless drive to push the boundaries of physics. We often think of technology as something that just happens, but Miller reminds us that every nanometer of progress was fought for. The silicon chip is the pinnacle of human achievement, and it is also the most dangerous weapon we have ever created. Conclusion: a world built on silicon. As we conclude our look at Chris Miller's chip war, one thing is clear: we can no longer afford to be ignorant about where our technology comes from. The invisible empire of the silicon chip is the foundation of our civilization. If that foundation cracks, the consequences will be felt by every person on the planet. The struggle for control is not going away. It is only going to intensify as we move deeper into the age of AI. The chip war is a reminder that in the 21st century, power isn't just about who has the most land or the most oil. It's about who can manipulate the smallest particles of matter to do the most work. The fight for the world's most critical technology is the fight for the future itself. And as Miller shows us, it is a war that is far from over. Outro. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive summary of Chip War, the Fight for the World's Most Critical Technology by Chris Miller. We hope this exploration has given you a new perspective on the device you are holding in your hand right now. In a world defined by technology, understanding the hardware of history is more important than ever. The chips are down, and the game is for all the marbles. If you like content like this, deep dives into the books that explain the hidden forces shaping our world, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to keep breaking down the most complex stories of our time into insights you can use. Thank you for listening, and stay curious about the invisible world that makes your modern life possible.